20 years ago, a girl's life ended at an elite boarding school. A man was convicted, and the case was closed. But was the real killer ever found?
When Claire Madison, a former student, returns to Kensington Academy, she begins unraveling secrets no one wanted to uncover.
What starts as a nostalgic visit turns into a journey into lies, betrayal, and a truth buried so deep no one dared to dig it up. Until now.
Lies, betrayal, and a past that refuses to stay buried. This is the story of secrets that refuse to stay hidden, a past that wouldn't stay buried, and the people who risked everything to uncover the truth.
Claire Madison hadn't been back to Kensington Academy since her graduation 20 years ago. She'd built a life far away from the school and the tragedy that defined her senior year. Her best friend, Lila Harper, had been murdered in the school's theater just months before they were set to graduate. The case? Solved, according to the police. Nate Pruitt, a maintenance worker, had confessed after hours of interrogation. The police had their man, and Kensington wanted to move on. But Claire couldn't. There was something about it that never made sense.
The invitation to speak at homecoming caught her off guard. As a successful filmmaker, Claire was used to speaking at events, but returning to Kensington was something else entirely. Still, something about the invitation stirred old questions she'd tried to bury. She told herself it was just a professional obligation. She'd give her speech and leave. But as she drove through the towering gates of the academy, memories hit her like a wave. And with them came the feeling she'd been ignoring for years. The truth about Lila's death wasn't what they said it was.
The campus looked unchanged. Grand stone buildings, ivy climbing up their walls, pristine lawns. But for Claire, it felt different, heavy, haunted. Her eyes kept returning to the theater. It had been Lila's stage, where she shone the brightest. It was also the place where her light had been snuffed out. Standing there, Claire felt a pull she couldn't ignore. Something about the theater felt unfinished, like it still held pieces of the truth.
Lucas, a former theater tech, had spent years avoiding his memories of that night. But they had never left him. He was there, working late. He remembered the argument. Lila's voice, sharp and insistent, clashing with someone else's, low and angry. Then a crash. By the time Lucas stepped outside, he saw a man in a dark coat leaving the theater, his steps quick and deliberate. He'd told the police what he saw, but they dismissed him. "We've got our man," they said. But Lucas had always known there was more to the story.
Claire and Lucas met by chance in the library. Claire was digging through old-school newspapers, her frustration clear. Lucas hesitated, but then the words spilled out. "I saw someone that night." Claire froze. "What do you mean?" Lucas told her everything, the voices, the crash, the man in the coat. Claire's heart raced. This wasn't just a memory. It was a clue, a crack in the story the police had told. And it meant Nate Pruitt might be innocent.
But Lucas wasn't done. "There's more," he said, lowering his voice. "A teacher, Mr. Clark. He left the school right after it happened. No one talks about why." Claire felt a chill run through her. Mr. Clark. She remembered him well. Charismatic, confident, always hovering near the students. Lila had mentioned him once in passing, her voice tinged with something Claire couldn't place at the time. Now she wondered, could he have been the reason for her friend's death?
Claire decided she needed answers. She went to Margot Landry, her old roommate, and now the head of alumni relations. Margot was as composed as ever, but when Claire mentioned Mr. Clark, her facade cracked. Lila wanted to end it, Margot admitted quietly. But he wouldn't let her. The words hit Claire like a blow. Lila had been involved with Mr. Clark. It wasn't just a rumor. And when she tried to break things off, it had ended in tragedy.
Margot's confession didn't stop there. She admitted she'd known about the relationship and had helped cover it up. "I didn't think it would go this far," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I thought I was protecting the school." Claire stared at her, her anger simmering beneath the surface. Margot had buried the truth to save the school's reputation, and in doing so, she had let an innocent man go to prison. Claire clenched her fists. Lila deserved better than this.
With Margot's confession in hand, Claire and Lucas went to the police. This time, the case wasn't ignored. Investigators dug into Mr. Clark's past, uncovering a pattern of inappropriate behavior and manipulation. Witnesses who had stayed silent for years began to come forward, corroborating the darker side of his character. It all pointed to one chilling conclusion. Mr. Clark had killed Lila in a fit of rage when she tried to leave him. The truth was finally coming to light.
Mr. Clark was arrested and Nate Pruitt was freed. After 2 decades of wrongful imprisonment, Nate walked out of the prison gates a free man. But the weight of those lost years hung heavy in the air. Claire watched as he reunited with his family, her heart a mix of relief and sorrow. Justice had finally come, but it couldn't undo the damage done.
As Claire left Kensington for the last time, she felt a strange mix of closure and regret. She had uncovered the truth, but the scars of the past would never fully heal. Lila was gone, but her story had finally been told. The lies that had hidden the truth for so long had been shattered.
And for Lucas, the weight he'd carried for 20 years began to lift. The theater, once filled with shadows and unanswered questions, now felt brighter. The truth doesn't erase the past, but it brings clarity. And for Claire and Lucas, that clarity was enough. Sometimes the past won't stay buried, and sometimes that's exactly what's needed.